Hey guys, this is Eric B. Horn, founder of Eric B. Horn Incorporated, and welcome to the next episode of the C.A.R.E blog. For those that are joining us for the very first time, C.A.R.E is an acronym for Career, Advancement, Readiness, and Enhancement. Long story short, with myself and Nissar, we're both experts in the career management space. So what we decided to do was join forces and create a bigger movement when it comes to helping individuals out when it comes to their career. Some of the previous episodes that we talked about was how your career health is wealth, how to make your car an online, and a mobile classroom, how to negotiate your salary. And today's episode, which I am extremely excited about, we're going to step into the world a little bit more about what Nissar does. I'll definitely have Nissar introduce himself, but as a heads up, he has a wonderful career platform called Career Metis, and he also has a great career podcast called Career Metis Podcast. He'll go into a little bit more detail about himself, but today's lesson is the lessons learned based off of the creating the podcast. Once again, this is one that I'm very, very excited about. It takes a little bit more of a sneak peek on what Nissar does with his career platforms. But first, what I want to do is hear it from the man himself. So Nissar, please introduce yourself to the world, if they don't know you already. You know.
Eric, thanks for the kind introduction. So, as Eric mentioned, my name is Nissar Ahamed. I'm the founder and managing editor of the site, the publishing platform called CareerMetis.com, which focuses on career advice for job seekers and freelancers. And as a derivative of that, I run the podcast, the Career Metis Podcast, which focuses on the same theme. And I've recorded close to 73 episodes, published a little more than 67 episodes, more coming. It was sort of accidental, but one of the things I like about running the podcast is all the amazing people I can come across, speak to them, and pick their brains and share that information with the world. So it's been an extensive and fun part of running of my career, my personality as well. It's one of the best things I've done, and I can get into more details. I don't know, Eric. What would you like to know?
Well, the first question, and I'm pretty sure the viewers will want to know is, what initially inspired you to start the podcast? That's because everyone's all about how do you get your start? Where did you start? What positioned you to even move forward with creating the podcast? So what inspired you to start Career Metis, the podcast?
So I have to start off by saying I procrastinated for a long time to get it started. And how I got the idea, I think it was around October 2013. I came across a gentleman. He was a CIO, Chief Information Officer for I think a big financial company here in Toronto. I noticed that he had a podcast. He was very active on LinkedIn. We connected on LinkedIn. And at that point, I was selling services in the recruitment industry. And my goal was to get into his company, speak to them about what we do. But I noticed what he did outside of his work. He ran a podcast. He wrote every week, published an episode every week. It got me really curious because I thought podcasting is, at that point, I was thinking more like radios, right? Like not everybody does podcasts. Big companies do podcasts. And this person was doing it as part-time. So I invited him for coffee. He graciously accepted. And I picked his brains, and he said, he opened my eyes. And at that point, I was just starting to think of the site itself, CareerMetis.com. And he gave me his ideas about why he started it, what was his mission, how it has impacted his life. For example, he was telling me how within the first few years of doing, first few months, many months, there is no traction. Then eventually, because of his title, because of who he is, he was getting speaking engagements, and people were offering him money and flights to go across the world to give speeches. And he said, you know what, I just the lesson from this talk, Nissar, is you can do it as well. Pick one topic and you can do it. And I'll be honest, it is going to be a long process. You're not going to be hitting it out of the ballpark. It takes time, it takes effort. So that was December 2013. I was thinking about it, got distracted with other things in my life. I did not get around to doing it until May of last year. Um, it's a variety of reasons. Fear, not, it could be concerns that nobody would show up to be interviewed. Who would want to listen to a guy with an Indian accent speaking about careers and all those irrational fears? And by May in 2016, I had the site. careermetis.com was growing. I was getting traction. I decided to start that as an extension of that, because podcast is another form of content, right? Blog is a content. Video, what we are doing is content. So I wanted to start a podcast, and I finally decided to do it. And so I told you about the idea inception and how it got started, and I just realized it isn't that difficult to get started. I did hire external help, like a technical person, to help me set up everything. Bought all this amazing equipment that you can see here from Amazon, and all I needed at that point was Skype. And it's amazing how much I realized it was going to be much more difficult, but it was not that difficult. I mean, in terms of equipment and software and all that, you can learn. Initially, I was doing a lot of editing myself. It is a frustrating process, but it isn't like rocket science or surgery or I don't know, even even opening a car and fixing, or even fixing furniture. No, you have the equipment, you have the software, the technology is out there. You're having a chat with someone else and you're recording it and posting it online. So that's the long story. One of the things I regret procrastinating. Had I started earlier, I would be in a better position, but hey, hindsight is 2020, right?
Hindsight is 2020. But actually, even though you started late, from what you're saying, you started.
Yes.
You have people, hopefully, and we'll go into the lessons learned in a minute, but hopefully people who are watching this, they may be on the fence right now to start a podcast. Mm-hmm. It may be the reasons based off of what you just said yourself, but regardless of the fact that you had all of these reasons why you shouldn't start, you started it. And if I'm not mistaken, you said you're 70 plus episodes in, right?
Yeah, 70 plus and going, and I have no intentions of stopping.
And you know what? That's exactly what people on the other end need to hear also. You started, you created a large amount of momentum, and you're not going to stop, which is great. Now, when it comes to your 70 plus episodes, I'm pretty sure that you have a numerous amount of lessons learned, because the beauty about having lessons learned, you really don't think it's a lesson until after the fact, right? Or you go in thinking that you're going to get a certain thing from a interviewer or even an experience behind the scenes when you're running your podcast. But based off of what you've experienced thus far, what are the top 2 lessons learned that you've learned being a podcaster?
Okay, so this is a great question, because I can talk about top 2 lessons I learned by being a podcaster, and I can also, if wanted down the line, I can also talk about, because my podcast is focused on careers, some of the top career lessons as well. So I'll talk about podcasting in general, and I think I would say it's the ultimate networking hack, period. Right. So we all know what networking is, right? Like, you're trying to grow your relationships. You can go traditional route, find an event, fly to a conference, expensive ways to do it. And even when you go there, you're meeting thousands of people. You may not form meaningful connections. And let's say there's someone out there you want to pick your brains. Chances are it's very, very difficult, right? With podcasting, it's becoming so popular right now that you would be surprised, Eric, the amount of rejection I get for people coming to my shows is so low. And
Mm.
initially, I thought I was going to get a lot of rejection, and people have turned me down within reason, right? Because when you're starting out, even 70 episodes is not a lot for a high-profile speaker or high-profile expert to come to my show. That's okay, but the amount, like, it's amazing when you call someone and invite them for coffee. You would probably get less responses than when you reach out. I have a podcast. I'd like to interview you. People love sharing their story, and podcast is a great medium, um, and it's amazing. So it's an ultimate networking hack. So since beginning May 2016, I have interviewed few people I know very well, like friends. Then I started interviewing experts. Um, I've sort of elevated myself in that niche to someone who was starting out nobody to someone who's somebody, right? Like, so people know me. These are experts. They run their own practices. They have spoken to me. So my network is completely changed. I'm very active on Facebook, as you know. My Facebook feed is completely different from what was a year ago, 2 years ago.
Right.
So that's the number one thing I would say. It's the ultimate networking hack. Second thing I would say, it's from a career perspective. I strongly think that most people should start a podcast, and it isn't. And I'll tell you, they should, and I'll tell you why. Because it's amazing the perception of. So let's say, so I started a podcast because I wanted to grow my business, the Career Matters platform. Because of which now people, and you know what, Eric, I had to be honest, at the beginning of the episode, you called me an expert. Thanks for that. That's very kind. I consider myself as a student practitioner, but that is the perception is reality. Like, but think about that. People perceive you as an expert because you have interviewed all the other experts. So the reason I'm saying that there's a second lesson is because let's say you want to start a job. And you want to start a job as a data scientist. Let me give you an example, right? Like, I'm just throwing it out there. Or let's say you've studied something and you want to start, let me choose, like, you want to become a content marketing manager. You've never done it before, but you see that is where the world is going. It's one of the skill set they don't teach in school. It's based on practice. So here's what I would recommend you do. Find top 25, 50 people in that industry, reach out to them, tell them I'm going to interview you from an outsider's perspective. Once you have done all this 25, 50 interviews, all of a sudden you have all this content. You can go to your job interview, say, listen, this is why I think, these are all the ideas I have. These are all the people I've spoken with. All of a sudden you have come from somebody who's a novice to an expert in that industry by just speaking to 25 to 50 people in that industry. I know it sounds easy, but I'll be honest, it sounds simple, but it's not. It takes a lot of work. But if you want to get any job or you want to start any career, interview people in that, record their conversations, post it somewhere out there. You have a portfolio. Similar to how a photographer goes and freelance photographer takes pictures, and all of a sudden he has a business. You can do the same thing as well. It's not that just because you interview people that you all of a sudden everybody thinks you're an expert. No, when you speak to these experts or professionals, you're spending 30 minutes with each one of them. You're getting all these ideas. The wheels in your brain start churning. You become a totally different person.
Wow. Okay. Wow, because it's so many people out there that's struggling to find their first job, or just a job in general. We talk about resumes, cover letters, interviews, and things of that nature. But just based off what you just said, nothing is simple. But guys, you got to understand, he just gave you the roadmap on how you can separate yourself when it comes to how you are perceived in your career. I mean, once again, it's not easy, because it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to interview 25 to 50 people. There's a behind the scenes piece that he's not talking about right now, but it's not as simple as, hey, here's a couple of questions, boom, done, because there's a certain You want to be on brand. You want to make sure that you're consistent. You want to make sure that you are setting the tone, that you're not wasting the interviewer's time. But based off of what I'm hearing, once you do what you do, you instantly become an asset to the person that's interviewing you. And I love the fact of, even though in my eyes, I feel that you're an expert, but even though you look at yourself as a consistent student, you're taking not only this information for your audience, but then also you are taking notes and you are absorbing their knowledge to for your own benefit, as you should, because and you hit the nail right on the head. When it comes to the networking, it's a crapshoot that you're going to meet a quality individual. Don't get me wrong. I feel everyone is genuine people, but we all know how many people would kill for a half an hour with Richard Branson, or a Warren Buffett, right? But for what you're doing, you are. And the individuals that, I have to tell you this, guys, the individuals that saw interviews, that they're some high level individuals, to the point where some of these individuals, it will take maybe a couple of months to get on their calendar just to do lunch or whatever have you, but this podcast, it creates a win-win situation, because not only is that person that he's interviewing, you're getting information from them, but they're getting positive exposure also, where they can take that to their colleagues or use that so they can position themselves and leverage their career for the next level. So it creates a huge win-win. So that's excellent. So yeah, a page full of notes. So the last question.
Can I just give you a quick example very quickly before we go to the next one? So I said everyone should do it, in my honest opinion. And first thing you'll see, okay, Nissar, it's easy for you. You have done it. You have all this fancy equipment. Yeah, I did spend money on that, right? It's like there is some investment of time, energy, software. But hey, this device it's a phone. All of us have a phone right now.
There it is.
Now, some of you are going to line up for the next iPhone, right? So might as well make it useful for your career. The recording on this is amazing. I would recommend this, but there should not be a showstopper to get all this fancy equipment. You could start recording people right on using this on your phone. There are apps out there. And that's why the barrier to entry is so low. And also, Eric, the competition isn't that high for podcasts. I mean, if you start a blog today, it takes a lot of effort to break the noise, or even YouTube channel takes a lot of effort. There's only 60,000 podcasts right now on the iTunes store, 60,000 compared to millions of blogs, millions of YouTube channels, millions of radio shows. So trust me, I mean, I've given you something that you can take away. It's not simple, but you can do it. It's easy if you apply it.
So wait, let me just back up, because I think based off of the data that you just gave the audience, it'll help me shift how I should strategize. For what you told me, that there are only 60,000 podcasts as opposed to millions of blogs, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna have to shift gears, but you said it, that the barrier of entry is very, very low. So from what Nissar is saying, it's not that hard to get in there and dominate. And with billions of people, billions of people, interesting people in this world that you can interview, that there should be no excuse whatsoever, which is a very good point. Hopefully, that relatively small number, as opposed to that relatively huge number for blogs, is a wake-up call for people who can do it. So wrapping up everything, someone hopefully who's looking at this vlog episode, they hear you're very successful with it. If someone who's viewing this on the other end wants to start, what's the first thing that he or she should do in order to have just to start a podcast? What's the first step that they should do?
So here's the beautiful thing about a podcast, right? You don't need to have a website. It's good to have. You don't need to have. There's YouTube, there's Stitcher, SoundCloud. The technology is already built. You don't need an audience. You can build an audience. What you need is probably you need to find out what niche you want to play. For example, I decided that I want to make my podcast and my site the go-to destination for job seekers and freelancers. Anything they want to know, and so I do interview experts, career experts who are job search coaches, but one thing I decided to do a little bit different on my podcast is I have all that advice which they can get anywhere else. I created something called a day in the life of. So I've interviewed a engineer, I've interviewed a couple of nurses, I've interviewed real estate agents, I've interviewed someone who works in the solar energy. The advantage of those podcasts, I believe, for the audience is you can get generic career advice everywhere else. I'm not sure, but if you want to know what a day-to-day looks like for an IT manager, that's my goal. I want to make that podcast. If all you care about is IT manager the right career for me, I wanted to create that platform. So that was my niche I was building. The exciting part is there are hundreds and thousands of jobs. I can go on for years doing those interviews. So I would say the niche is really, really important. Find that niche. And that is absolutely necessary, because after the equipment, the platform, you don't have to start with fancy. You can start with something simple. Then you can work. Once you find the niche, then you can start finding the people.
Right? Gotcha. Okay. Well, on that note, once again, I love this episode because it definitely focused. We talk about career stuff all the time, but it gave a deeper dive into what you do specifically with regards to your career platform and your career podcast. So what we'll do is make sure that we have in the description, we'll have a link to Nissar's Career Meta's website, the podcast. The takeaway: do not waste time. Subscribe. I'm pretty sure people who have iPhones, you can just click on it, find it, and subscribe. There's a wealth of information on this podcast. And once again, this can be one of the pieces that you listen to when you are in your moving library, one of the episodes that we talked about before. So before we sign off, did you have any last thoughts or anything for the audience before we move on?
Thanks for the shout out, Eric, again. If you have any questions, if you're stuck, if you have an idea and you want to pick my brains, just put it in the comment. I'll reply. I gave you some high-level examples, but I can give you some specifics in terms of what you can get started. So, that's all. I would say. Podcasting is something that I think every business and every individual, if you're serious about your career or business, should seriously look into.
Okay, which is great. The next episode we'll talk about is, it's funny, I love to highlight other individuals, but when it comes to highlighting me, I feel a little weird, but I'll get over it. So the next episode will be me talking about the lessons learned based off of me being a book publisher. So on behalf of Nissar and myself, thank you guys and have a great day.
See you guys next time.